welcome to another edition of Inside Government. My studio guests are none other than the chairman of the Central Voting Bureau, Mr. Jason Rogers, and of course I have Kathy Snijders, head of the Civil Registry within the Ministry of General Affairs. Welcome to this edition of Inside Government. It's good to have both of you here. Thank you for accepting
Well, thank
our
you very much,
invitation.
Cedric.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. Elections 2018 is in the air.
Sure is.
We are quite active here in little country St. Martin. 2014, 2016, now again 2018. Jason, you've been busy with the organization, of course, and getting us prepared for elections 2018. First of all, let's establish for those that have not been brought up to speed in regard to the Central Voting Bureau and what it is. Let's start there. What is the operational structure of the Central Voting Bureau?
Well, thank you very much, Cedric, for having me here this afternoon to elucidate a little bit on the tasks and responsibilities of the Central Voting Bureau, and also to inform you and your viewers about the preparations for the parliamentary election on February 26, 2018. As you said, this is, of course, the third election since, country St. Martin.
Right.
Many people think that because it's 10-10-10, that was the first election, but no, officially those were elections for the island councils, and those members became then parliamentarians of country St. Martin. So the first ever parliamentary election was in August 2014, and then we had another one in 2016 that was in September, and now we're on to the third one in February 2018. The role of the Central Voting Bureau is actually to oversee the organization of the election. We organize the election. It is our task and responsibility, duty as a matter of fact, to ensure that open, fair, and transparent elections are organized. And of course, decisions that we make can be challenged. And we're open to that because of the transparency. We've had that already taking place in 2016 with a decision that we took to omit one of the candidates off of the list of a political party, and that went to court. Ultimately, the Central Voting Bureau was the court decided that the decision that was taken back then, that it was a just decision. So, as you said, it's a young country. You started out by saying that. And with that, you also have legislation that you would initially thought, okay, that was a good legislation, or how should you interpret it? But as you go forward, you will see certain things that, are these legislations actually just for this current time that we're living? So that's good that people will challenge certain decisions, because then it becomes clearer as well. Coming back to your question, the Central Voting Bureau, we have 5 members and 2 extraordinary members, and there is a committee that basically appoints us, and that committee consists of the president of the Joint Court of Justice of all 6 islands within the Dutch Caribbean. And we also have the vice chair of the Council of Advice of St. Martin, as well as the chairperson of the General Audit Chamber. And we are appointed based on our credentials and our experiences as well.
Let's look at you. Your background, just let the audience know, is within law.
Yes.
Okay.
I am an attorney by profession.
Okay. The voting process in St. Martin regulated by law, and we would hope also that the procedures are quite clear to the general public. Now, the question is can you elaborate on the specific tasks of the Central Voting Bureau?
Sure. Now, many persons will think, well, election is the day of voting, but that is so, but a lot goes into it because there's a whole lot of preparation. We work closely together with the Civil Registry. We have Kathy Snijders right here. And we are continuously, on a weekly basis, we're in touch with each other. And as time goes down, it's actually on a daily basis, as a matter of fact. Now, it's what most people see from the beginning is, of course, the day of postulation day. This year, it was January 5th. And from there on, there's where the candidates, or at least the political parties, they would submit their list of candidates to the Central Voting Bureau. We make sure that, we are available from 9 until 4 in the afternoon. And that's just not a time that we ourselves have established, but that is established in the law. And the representative of each political party would have to submit their list of candidates with support and documentations to the chairman of the Central Voting Bureau. And then you also, certain parties that have not received a seat in the previous parliamentary election, they will have the obligation for their list to be endorsed by 1% of of the valid cast votes of the previous election. So, and after that, we have to look at examine the list of candidates as well as the support and documentation in order to see if everything is done in accordance with the law. And then we vote on that and take a decision whether or not the list will be valid. After that, then we have, and that's, by the way, it's the postulation, the meeting regarding the validation of the list. It's a public meeting, so every eligible voter is allowed to be there. We announce that publicly. Then we have a public meeting again where it concerns the coloring and the numbering of lists as well. And there are other public meetings because after election, the election day, which is, of course, a very tedious day, but we are full of energy with that. But 5 days later, after election, because the results that you will see are here on election night, those are not the final results. The results are validated in a public meeting 5 days after election, and that is prescribed by law, and that meeting starts at 10 a.m.
With elections, actually, we look at elections even within the Western Hemisphere, there's a new challenge since the Trump administration has taken office. When it comes to the question of the integrity of elections. Mm-hmm. So one of the questions we wanted to pose to you is the Central Voting Bureau's role in making sure that transparency, integrity, and proper standards and procedures are followed. How does the Central Voting Bureau play its role in making sure those things take place when an election takes place?
Well, what we do, many persons will see the Central Voting Bureau as the organ or entity that ensure that those standards and procedures are taken into consideration as prescribed by law. However, it's not only us. We have a lot of stakeholders. Like I just mentioned, we have the civil registry that we're in contact with on a daily basis, but we're also in touch with law enforcement as well, the police force of St. Martin, because public order is something that is very important. We have to ensure that the days leading up to the election and also election day itself, that is done in a very smooth and transparent manner, as a matter of fact. So we are pretty close in contact with the police force of St. Martin, the Minister of Justice is actually in charge of public order to ensure that certain guidelines are put into place. And like you said, integrity, transparency is very important. And to ensure that those things take place, that is very important for the legitimacy of the results of the election. So those are things that we take very seriously, and we ensure that there is no shadow of doubt absolutely whatsoever when it comes to the results of the election. So election is, in order to ensure that there's no shadow of doubt, we got to ensure that the entire process from A to Z, so even when we're talking about postulation or even before that, it's very important that it transpires in a seamless manner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There are, of course, the entities, and we have Kathy here as head of the Civil Registry. Kathy, I want you to jump in here and give us some insight in regard to the election process and your role with the Civil Registry, working along with the Central Voting Bureau in preparation for. What's the steps that the Civil Registry takes?
First of all, thank you for your invitation, and all listeners, good afternoon. What's most important thing is the communication between the two parties, let's say, or entities, and how everything we do is we call and make sure it's on a professional base and legal base, and as transparent as possible also. So everything we do is in agreement with each other to make sure that we do the correct procedure. Of course, within the government, because we are government and they are a separate body, and we have the other departments within government that has to help us also with all the preparation. We are the executing part of the law. We are the preparation, the operational part of the election. So we print the cards, we make sure that all the booths are there. Of course, for instance, we work with FROMI. FROMI has to go on the day or the weekend before election, seeing that the election is this time on a Monday. So the weekend prior to the election, we go and we prepare. And the Central Voting Bureau will pass and see if all the booths and the tables are placed correctly. So that's like a small part of it that we do together. Okay. So there's a lot going on. During the day, we have our daily work. We have to execute our daily work, helping the citizens with all the documents that they need. But after the 5 o'clock, we continue working, make sure all the cards are printed, all the cards are in the envelope, all the registers are printed out. So, and even stamping all the ballots, yes. and make sure the ballots are count exactly. And also we have to find the 100 person that sits at the polling stations on the day of election. So all those little things that on the 26th, indeed, just as Mr. Rogers said just now, is everybody goes and vote, but there's a lot of preparation before that day.
Of course, and that's the thing that we want to, of course, bring to the public, is that awareness of the dynamics of what you are part of when you wake up to go and vote. There's a lot of things happening there that went into getting to this particular point.
Like Kathy was saying, I mean, it's like you have members at the polling station. You have 100 of them. You have each polling station. We have 20. So each polling station will have 3 members and 2 extraordinary members. They are going to be trained. The census office is going to be training them in order to see to let them know what the procedures are, and also how do you count ballots, how do you count the votes. Those are very important things. And what a lot of people don't know is like what happened behind the scene as well. Is like even the design of a ballot, for instance. Those are things that we are in contact where we discuss it. How does the ballot take? How should the ballot look? Another thing is, it's like, let's take, for instance, last election. We had 9 political parties. How are you going to design the ballot? Because now it's going to be a big ballot. You have the top row and you have the second row. Now, which parties do you put on top? Which parties do you put below? Of course, the lists are numbered, but of course, some of them don't want to be on the second row, even though you have one up until 9. Why can't you have a ballot with 9 parties or 9 lists next to each other? Why should you have a first row and a second row? So those are those are discussions that you need to have. And there's so many things that goes behind it. I mean, if you're talking about election itself and how to put up the booth, of course, we inspect all 20 polling stations to make sure that the polling station, the booths are all set up in the manner of the law, how it is stated in the law. But one of the things that last election that I was also not surprised, but I realized, well, wow, the people at the civil registry, they work pretty hard, is the packing of each, the facilities, the materials that you need for each polling station, the things that you have to ensure that it is all in that package. It's a whole lot of work. And I was there the Saturday before, because I think it was on a Monday last time too, and they were packing each suitcase with all those things. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It's very.
They do it, and for that, we are really happy with the men and women that work at the civil registry, of course, for your help.
All right, let's back up just a second and take it through the first step. We have postulation day, the process of postulation day. Let's get the insight from the Central Voting Bureau. Take us through that process. How does it go?
Well, what we do is what we have done. Let me just explain what we did this time, which, of course, we did the previous times as well. We informed the political parties of postulation day as soon as we are, as Central Voting Bureau, are aware that an election is going to take place, because that national decree is sent to us. And once that is sent to us, we hit the road running and with preparations. So the names, the contact person that we have in our system, in our registration system, we contact them and let them know, well, officially, that there's an election is going to be held. Of course, they didn't know about it because it's in the media, but we officially informed them as such. And we asked them if they are going to be the representative to their political party. Now, as per the legislation, electoral ordinance, it states that each political party needs to have a representative and a deputy representative to the Central Voting Bureau. Those persons are our contact person. So we're not going to be reaching out to every person on that list. Just those 2 persons, the representative and the deputy representative. And as a matter of fact, based on the law, only those persons are allowed to submit a list of candidates on postulation day legally. So we have a lot of contact with them from before. We have meetings as well for all those representatives, and we explain them. We take them through the process, what is expected, what they need to submit, make sure to look at X, Y, and Z. We give them a checklist as well as to what all they need to take into consideration, what all they need to submit. Now, what we also do is we give them any other information that we have, such as the ministerial decree with stating what colors are allowed for a list, all that information they have. So now on what we have also done in order for postulation day to transpire in a very smooth manner is that, as per law, like I stated, we have to be present between 9 and 4 p.m. However, we don't want political parties to be bumping into each other, running into each other while submitting their list. So we have awarded time slots, and we've told them they can select which time slot they would want. We make sure, in order to avoid any kind of preferential treatment, we tell them first come, first serve. So if you check your email, you indicate that you want time slot X, you will be receiving time slot X. So it's on a first come, first serve basis. And they come with time slots of 20 minutes with a 10 minutes break in between. So that's how it works on postulation day. And they submit your list of candidates. We take a quick check, a quick examination if documents are submitted. And after that, some of them, like this time, we did it in the House of Parliament, which I think was a good platform for them this time as well, because they're actually vying for one of the 15 seats in Parliament. And they went and they sat over into the seat of the Parliament, and they were allowed to give a speech at that point in time, which kind of have given them that platform. Hey, I am in Parliament now. I am vying for that political seat. And they gave their message. So each person got the opportunity to give that message, and I thought it was successful, as postulation is, a matter of fact.
And I agree. As a broadcaster, there with you for postulation day, the smooth transition between the parties and the ability to be able to address the public from the party's perspective, it worked very, very well, went very smoothly. The endorsement process was another one. Actually, before I get into the endorsement, let's confirm first and foremost, postulation day, 2018 elections taking place. How many parties have officially postulated?
We have 6 political parties.
6 political parties.
Yes.
Some of them requiring endorsement.
Correct.
Now, if someone who does not understand the endorsement process, let's go through that. What is the legal requirement when you are speaking about a party needing to be endorsed? Explain that to us.
Okay. Now, once we look at the electoral ordinance, it states that each political party needs to be endorsed. What we do mean by endorsement, they need to have signatures by eligible voters, basically supporting their candidacy, their participation into election. Our electoral ordinance states that in order to be endorsed, you need 1% of the valid casted votes at the previous parliamentary election. So last election, we had over 14,200 and something votes. I don't know the exact amount on my head, but calculated onto 1%, that is 142 signatures, if I'm not mistaken, 142 that we had. So each political party would require an endorsement, so 142 signatures. And of course, within that article of the legislation, you have the possibility for exemptions of that. And the exemption requirement is that if you've acquired one or more seats into Parliament, the previous parliamentary election, then you would be exempted out of them. So where if we look at the previous, the 2016 parliamentary election, we had a national alliance that had more than one seat, and we also had a U.S. party that would have had one or more seats. We had the UP party that had one or more seats, and the DP party that had one or more seats. However, only the National Alliance and the U.S. party would have been exempted, because if we see now, we have the UP party and the DP party. They are running together on one list, but that one list is a new party. So that new party would require the signatures, the endorsement as well. And they have also received it just as the other parties, such as the SDM, the Christian Party, the PPA as well.
Okay. Colors of the political parties, there's a process, I understand also, that is applied there and legally
exactly
rooted in the Central Voting Bureau's legal proceedings. How does that work in regard to the coloring assignments for the respective parties?
Well, the Central Voting Bureau does not decide on the coloring, but it's the Minister of General Affairs, so that's the Prime Minister, that decides which colors are allowed to, colors are allowed to be awarded to a list. Now, that decision with the amount of colors, they are placed in a ministerial decree. Now, that ministerial decree, by law, I am also obliged to forward that on to the political parties once I am aware of that. There's also a timeline for that, which I've done immediately once I have received that ministerial decree. And that, again, I want to be clear, the color that is chosen is for the list of candidates. So once you see the ballot, you're going to see that on the ballot, every political list has a color on it above. It does not mean, because I remember back in 2014, there were misunderstanding about that, because there was one political party stated, well, you know what? That color was awarded to me, so therefore no other political party can use that color in their campaign paraphernalia, for instance. But the law does not state anything about colors being awarded to or for campaign paraphernalia. It just states about the color being awarded to the list. So the color that's going to be awarded to the list is the list that you're going to see on the ballot. So if you have, for instance, gold as a color, that's the color it's going to be on the list on the ballot. So if another party would want to have gold in their campaign paraphernalia, it's allowed. It's not a smart thing to do, because you don't want to have any confusion with your constituents, because at the end of the day, you want to have that your party is identified with a certain color, and that identification will be recognized again on the ballot once they go to cast your vote.
Cast their vote. Okay.
And just as the same process as well with the awarding of the colors, if it is that there are no conflicts in terms of color, those colors will be awarded. But if there are conflicts of colors, so two political parties choose the same color, then it will automatically go to the party that had participated in the previous election and had one or more seats. So that color would go to that political party. And if that's not the case, two political parties choose the same color, and none of them would have had one or more seats during the previous election, then fate decides.
Okay. Post Hurricane Irma and heading into an election, I'm sure that things have changed just slightly. Now, I'm looking at the polling stations. Now, I'm thinking the Central Voting Bureau, along with the Civil Registry, can most likely address this question. How many polling stations are we looking at heading into this particular election, and what preparations are being made to get them prepared?
Okay, we have divided the country in districts. We have 20 districts. However, you can imagine that some buildings are destroyed, no roof or major damages, and we have to deviate from that location to the next location. So this year, because of Irma hurricanes, we had to, officially, one location was really destroyed, and we needed to seek another facility. Two others locations are not more available, and for those also we had to seek other location. So with this election, we have 3 new locations. It's the districts, we don't change the district, the same street names and everything stays under the same district, only the location. You can imagine though that on St. Martin it's not easy to have the locations change easily, because you don't have facilities to accommodate elections. And you cannot say, okay, I'm just going to choose a place and say I'm going to. It's sensitive. The building also have to have some requirements. Safety, you have to think about safety first. Parking spaces, if it's big enough that people can come and vote, because most of the districts are around 1,400 voters. So you have to have the space for those.
Right, because the traffic is definitely, it peaks at specific points that people like to get in there early in the morning, first and foremost. So you get a very large influx of voters coming in early at the polling station. So, of course, your facilities have to be prepared. You mentioned 3. Is there 3 or 4?
Correct.
3.
It's 3?
Yes.
Okay. And let's identify those so that our listening audience and viewers know exactly where they need to go this time around, because there are changes being made this time, so they could understand where they have to go to pick up, first and foremost, to vote, and of course, pick up voting cards.
Okay, I'm going to start the votes.
Okay.
First, we have Raul Illich was one of our locations. We moved to NIPAB, the National Institute for
Professional Advancement.
Professional Advancement, yes. And then we have the Celebration Palace. We moved to Butte Hotel, stay on the same area. We try to keep in the same area so they don't have to drive far or be in a different district that normally they do. And we have the Justice Academy. That's the building that had most damages. And we moved to the Dr. Bryson building. There we have a community help desk, and we are using that facility.
In Dutch Quarter.
In Dutch Quarter.
Dutch Quarter.
Yes.
All right. So those are the
3.
the 3 that have been relocated.
Correct.
From what people originally knew.
Yes.
In their lineup. Right. And of course, we're speaking about it now, but for those who want to see this in writing, you can of course go to the government information page and of course visit the official government website, stmartingov.org, in order to be able to get a full clarity of exactly where you need to go.
Yes.
Right.
Any other changes?
Just to add on that too, the Central Voting Bureau, we want to actually we're coming with our own website as well. So that will be centralvotingbureau.sx, and every important information we'll be posting that on their website as well.
Great. When are you launching that?
Well, we're still busy with the designer, and
Okay.
we hope for it to be launched, pretty soon. I just don't want to give a
Okay,
date,
but
but very soon.
All right, but you're going to get out in front of elections. That's the
absolutely,
goal. That's
absolutely.
The goal. Okay.
That's the goal.
On election day, what time will polls open and close? We don't want to take it for granted. Though some of us are very experienced, some people might still be very curious. So let's share that information with the general public.
Well, it's as stipulated in the legislation, is from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. We encourage each and every one not to wait at the last moment to go out and cast your vote. Do it as soon as possible. So if you have the opportunity to cast your vote in the morning, go out and do it as soon as possible. Certain persons, they start working at 9, some people earlier. If you're working at 9, the polling stations are open as of 8 o'clock. So there's no excuse not to go out and vote. You have 12 hours to vote from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m.
What is the legal allotted time that an employer must give to an employee in order to be able to cast their vote?
Very good question, Cedric. Now, contrary to what a lot of people think, that is 4 hours, and I think traditionally too, persons used to work a half day, but that is not the case based on the legislation. I mean, if the employer wants to give you a half day off, that's fine. But by law, you get 2 hours in order to go and cast your vote. But there's also a little thing to it as well. You don't the way the legislation is formulated, you do not automatically get those 2 hours. You only get them if you're unable to cast your vote outside of working hours. So if you cannot cast your vote outside of the regular working hours, then you would get those 2 hours. So if you're working from, let's say, 7 to 3, you actually have from 3 to 8 p.m. in order to cast your vote. So your employer is not obliged to give you those 2 hours. Right. But it's my experience, though, that employers are very lenient where that is concerned. And we also encourage employers to be lenient where that is concerned for their employees to go out and execute their democratic right.
Right, because it is stipulated by law that you have to do this. What happens if the person or businesses seem to challenge the law and one fails to conform? Any consequences?
Well, there are also indeed consequences where that's concerned in electoral ordinance. But to be honest, Cedric, it's difficult to even find an example where that's concerned, because if you're working in the morning up until, from 7 until 3, you have until 8 in the evening to go and cast your vote still. Mm-hmm. So there's no excuse not to vote. Okay.
Kathy, this, I believe, falls directly in your responsibility to let the public know. What type of identification do I need to have in order to vote? Because I need to make sure that my vote counts on the day of election. So tell me, what do I need to walk to the polls with? Do I need to bring my birth certificate? I mean, what do I need?
You need officially two things.
Okay.
You need your the card that you will get that you're eligible to vote, and also you need an identification card.
And not an identification card that, expired like 5 years ago.
No, not. It's the national ID card of St. Martin, the drive license of St. Martin, and your passport. Those are the three. It has to be valid. Document also, sometimes people say valid, and it might be broken two pieces. That makes the ID card invalid already. So please make sure you have a valid ID card. And we have right now the opportunity to get your ID card. Everyone can come to the Civil Registry on Saturdays. We are open between 9 and 11. I'm saying 9 and 11 because that's the time slot that we will leave persons in. However, we have to take in consideration our staff also. Last week we had around, let me say, 230 persons came in to do their ID cards. It's a lot. And our staff is working from Monday till Friday, from 8 in the morning till 7 at night, and also the Saturday. So at a certain moment we had to say, and the building was also full, we had to say, I believe it was 10:30, sorry, we cannot take more persons to do their ID card. But identification is important. The ID card, the drive license, or your passport. I know with all that St. Martin went through with the hurricanes, a lot of documents are lost or damaged. So we are trying to help as much as possible. If your or ID card or drive license or passport is still valid on the day after election, officially your ID card is valid until, let's say, the 26th is still valid on that day. So you can still use it.
Okay.
And remember, I had to go back over about the
actually, I was going to say,
distribution.
to ask you the question concerning, before you get to the distribution, I'm a stickler for details. The ID card, and you said like breaking in half.
Yes.
What about that wear and tear factor? Where your card, after a period of time, use in wallet and things of that sort, things start to probably fade. What does a person need to do in that situation if their card starts to look a little deformed? Not necessarily cracked in half, but fading of information, things of that sort. What do you recommend?
Those things are very important, not only for election, for all entity. You need to renew it. I would like to say that our new card is a polycarbonate card, so that won't be an issue anymore. Officially, it shouldn't be an issue anymore. But the previous card, indeed, we had some experience that you get that problem, issues.
Yeah.
But yes,
Okay.
we are here also on the day of election. We want to try to minimize it, but on the day of election, we have also our department open in case there are these type of situations.
Okay, let's get into the distribution factor. How is that going to work for 2018?
Yes. Seeing the circumstances once again, in collaboration with the minister from the beginning, can we have an election? What's going to happen? One of the questions was how people are going to get their cards. And it was a discussion to say, let's sit together and see how we're going to distribute the cards. And of course, together we came to some solutions. And one of the solutions is let's come with substations right now and leave the eligible voters to come and collect their cards. So we have 4 substations this year. It's something new for St. Martin. We have the Dutch Quarter Help Desk by Dr. Bryson. All the persons that fall on the districts around that area will go there to collect their cards. All the persons falling around the area of St. Peter's, Ebenezer, can go to the Minor Rupert in St. Peter's. We have Simpson Bay. Everybody over the hill, Cole Bay, Simpson Bay, can go to the Simpson Bay Public Service Center. That's by the fish market. And we also have all the persons in town can go to the previous civil registry building. We call it census office, receiver office. There we will distribute the ones for town.
I was slipping you my notes thinking that you might need to look at something, but you're pretty good there. Okay, so those are the locations that
Yes.
the public will have to go to pick up their voting
Collect
card.
it.
So we want to make sure that it's clear here. There'll be no picking up of voting cards at the civil registry.
No, in the new building, we will not be dealing with it. We will be dealing with it
At those
at
four
those
locations.
4 locations. Of course, we have the persons that when the 12th of December was the closing of the registry. Sorry, 6th of December was the closing of the registry, and all persons that register after the 6th and they are Dutch, or persons that became Dutch after the 6th of December and they still want to participate on the election, they can always get a Model 1 form, take it to the court, and the court will make a decision if they can be added to the registry, voting registry. So those persons will collect their card at the new building at our office because they're not part of the first batch that we printed.
I think what is also important to know is that as we want to accommodate the persons of St. Martin in order to go out and get your card and go out and vote, it is not only the substations that we have because, of course, they have, I think it's next Monday, they will start distributing the card. They cannot distribute it, but to pick them up at the substation, I think we wanted to start on Monday. From Monday until Friday, from 9 until 5 p.m. So those substations that Kathy just mentioned, they will be opening their doors on upcoming Monday to Friday. So they have 5 days between 9 and 5 p.m. So after that first week, Cedric, they also have a second opportunity because those cards that will be left over, they will be distributed by the postal services.
Okay, so the post office will still get involved in this process at some point.
They will get involved in the process as well. So, but of course, the volume would not be that much because we will be hoping that persons will actually make use of that opportunity to go to the substations and collect their cards. So the ones that are left over then will be distributed by the postal services. And of course, after that, as per the legislation, if you have not received your voting card within 8 days prior to election date, then you can go to the civil registry to collect your voting card. That's also, that will be by the old building, or would that be by the new building?
That will be by the new
That
building.
will be that.
Yes.
That third option will be at the new building.
Okay.
Yes.
And an ID requiring legal valid ID in order to pick up your voting card as well.
Yes.
Okay.
The important part with it is I want to recommend all the persons that for the time being that they are not on their regular address because of their house being damaged to collect the cards, and if they know also that they don't have a mailbox to collect the cards. If you have a mailbox and you're home or you have someone taking care of your mail, you can say, okay, I'm going to leave the post office do that part for me. But if you're sure you want to vote and take part of the election and you don't have a mailbox, please collect your voting card.
I think what I would want to impress upon the population of St. Martin is to make as much use as possible of that possibility, the option to go to the substations and collect your voting cards.
Okay. Final words to wrap up the program, and of course, and get the public prepared for elections 2018. Let's start with you, Kathy. Civil registry, final words that you'd like to say to the public and the voting populace in preparation for elections.
It's not easy, but don't wait until the last minute. That's my final word for everyone. And make use of your rights. It's very important.
Jason.
Well, yes. We just want to actually instill the confidence in the people of St. Martin that the Central Voting Bureau and, of course, the Civil Registry, but ultimately us as Central Voting Bureau, that we are prepared for this election. We are ready for the 2018 election. Of course, everyone knew that we have lost, we have suffered damages where our election materials were blown away in the container we had them stored. But we've ordered and we have received new materials. So the voting booths, the voting bins, and even the color pencil, the red color pencil, everything, we have received that. So we are ready to hit the road for February 26th. We encourage each and every person to go out there and execute their democratic rights. And I think what is also important is that because the distribution of cards will go a little different this year, whereby we're having substations, persons that are not sure at which substation they need to go, because that is, Kathy just mentioned that as well, which district falls on the what substation. That information is going to be put out there. We're going to put it on sites. It's going to be on the government site as well. We're going to be putting it on our sites. But there's also going to be a helpline whereby if they have questions, they can call that number to in terms of which substation they can go and collect their card. There would also be a telephone number for that, so they can go call and have their information.
Okay, so I guess we'll put that into the ads that'll be going out.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that everyone can identify what's going on. Kathy, Jason, thank you very much for being with us inside government and, of course, explaining to us the legal and proper process as we get prepared for elections 2018.
Thank you very much, Cedric. The pleasure was mine.
And, of course, to our television viewers and radio listeners, thank you for tuning in and being a part of this special edition of Inside Government. If you've missed our broadcast, we invite you, of course, to log on to the official government website, stmartingov.org, for video on demand. On behalf of the team here at the Department of Communication, I'm Cedric Peterson. Thanks for tuning in.